Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Bare and Brutal podcast, the podcast where we bare our feelings and are brutally honest while highlighting stories of resilience and transforming pain into power. I'm your host, Michelle, and today's episode is actually the start of season 2. And I did not tell our guest that today. But welcome to the start of season 2. It's been a great month of recuperating and preparing for all the amazing content and guests that we have in store for you this season. And that brings me to today. I am absolutely thrilled to welcome Carrie Hennessy and Ellen Garavati, the dynamic duo behind
That's
Smash Up
us.
Somatics. Carrie, an opera singer and vocal coach, and Ellen, a licensed marriage and family therapist. They combine their expertise to explore the powerful connection between voice, movement, and emotional connections. Through their compassionate and playful approach, they help individuals attain mind-body alignment and foster deeper emotional connections, which is something I think we could all use. So please join us as we dive into the transformative world of somatic work and learn how our voices can guide us toward healing and authentic connection. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies.
You just said it all.
I was like, gosh, she makes
This
it sound
great.
We're
Well,
so
you
happy
both
to be
are
here,
so
Michelle.
cool. Yes.
Oh,
Well,
Thank you
I
so
have
much.
I have to outline for the audience really quickly how our first initial meeting went.
I would love to hear
Yes,
this.
please.
Yes.
Because first I discovered you two because you were guest starring on a mutual podcast host that I follow, and your energy on that clip I saw was just so infectious. And I reached out to you, and we finally met, and I was completely blown away. I'll be honest, I was going to the meeting, I was just drained from life things, wasn't feeling
yes.
it. And then when I spoke to you both, I just lit up because you're just so, how do I even put this into words? I'm sure the audience is going to, I know they're going to see the type of people you are today, but I need to tell them and prepare them for how joyful and like safe I feel talking with you two. And you're just literal two rays of sunshine, and I'm really grateful that we've made connections and that we're here today.
Oh, God. Michelle, can we just bring you with us everywhere? That is so fueling is how I feel. And I hear that that's how I feel in hearing you just express your experience in combination with like I hear you say that that's how it felt meeting with us. And that's really like that power of interconnection of how we do fuel one another by sharing what's happening within us and how it is to experience ourselves in the presence of others. Yes. And sharing what we notice about that with sometimes that specific person, but also even just sharing it with other people, what it was like to be in an interaction, to be in a relationship. And how
So
many minutes in?
Yeah.
Boom. We did it.
We explained the whole process and why we do what we do. That's it. But really, that's the power of voice and interconnection.
Yes. And we're definitely going to dive deeper into that today. Before we get into the nitty gritty, can you please both share a bit about your backgrounds? I know I gave you a bit of introduction, but how did you both come to specialize in somatic work and all the cool things that you're doing now?
Would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah. I'm already feeling the tears. Like,
let her rip, Carrie.
Dang.
We're 4 minutes in.
Brutal.
That's what we're.
We're 4 minutes in. Here it is.
It's bare.
We're throwing it down. So I stumbled upon somatics. I didn't know. Coming back to singing, I quit for 12 years after a sexual trauma. with somebody that I trusted musically. So suddenly this thing, music and singing that had been so cathartic, was now only linked to this one event.
Mm.
And it kept calling me back. I needed to sing. And there were no teachers. They were just, they were technicians. So they were trying to get me to connect with my voice in a very mechanical way.
Mm-hmm.
When really every time I tried to, there was so much numbness in my body that there was no way I could get the mechanism to work.
Mm-hmm.
Because I couldn't connect to my breath. I couldn't feel my rib cage. And it just felt like every time I tried to make a sound, I was getting kicked in the throat.
Mm.
So I stumbled upon Somatics because I started using the technical work I was doing with my teacher, who was also very kind and patient and really let me work through the emotions, but didn't have other pieces that I need. So I was sort of providing it for myself, where I would, when I was folding laundry with my very young children, I would pay attention to my breath. I would pay attention to my tongue being tense. I would pay attention to when I was holding my breath. And so as I started coming back to singing, I was realizing that it was much more important not to just pay attention technically to the things, but like, what's causing it? What is I didn't know the word trigger, but what was causing me to pull my tongue back? What was causing me to hold my breath? And found out later, as I worked deeper and deeper and worked with students, that was a practice of somatics. And Peter Levine, talking about, who is a sort of a famous person in the somatic world, talking about, our bodies really storing traumatic memories and really needing to work through it in that way. So that's how I started working with myself and then working with my voice students in that way, to help them find their authentic voice and also heal in a way that they didn't anticipate they were just going to come in and learn how to sing in my studio.
We're just going to play.
We're just going to play.
We're just coming for a singing lesson.
Yeah.
Yes, you are. No, you're not.
No, you're not.
You are.
You are.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Carrie, for being vulnerable and sharing your journey and how you stumbled upon
thanks for letting
somatic
that.
work. Yeah.
Yep.
Can I share something I noticed?
Yeah.
I have heard this versions of your story a few times, but today in particular, there was this tear that I watched just like roll down your face very slowly. And first and foremost, there was just admiration for your ability to like let emotions be there exactly as they are. But then also I was like, wow, like this tear is transforming just like Carrie is as we speak. It was fascinating.
Moving slowly.
Yeah. And that's also why I share that, is because like that's what was moving within me, and hearing this story that like, I've heard as many times now, probably. Maybe more, maybe less, but there was something different about it today. In a really lovely way.
Thank you.
Thank you. What a journey.
I'm so glad to be here to witness this with you both.
Isn't it just neat?
Yes, I love it. Ellen, I'd love it if you could also outline your background now and talk about your journey.
Really the foundation of my continued expanding awareness into somatic work was really founded in horseback riding, competitive horseback riding. And I say that because the main language of communication between horse and rider is physical expression. And so the more precise you can be, the more clear you can be, the more, the better your communication is. And I didn't start exceptionally young. I was 13 when I started riding. And so, I didn't have that same experience that a lot of horseback riders do, that they like started in the womb or they started at 3 or 4. But in the years to follow, coming into it in my teenagerhood and things lining up just right, that I got to really spend a lot of time in it, was at a really foundational time, because there's like all this identity process that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then I come from a large family, and there was a big familial transition that happened. I went from being, the youngest. I'm the youngest of 5. 4 of us were living in the house. And in a 1-month time period, I went from being the youngest of 4 to being the only kid in the house, and starting at a high school that I was not where I grew up going to school. And so I was new, and I was going into high school. I didn't know anybody, and my family left to go do their life things. But, and so really, like, horseback riding was this place where I could go and be. And what I knew is that, and I think also what my parents knew, is that I was different after coming home from the barn. And not that I was like a troubled child by any means, but I know I felt just a soothedness and a happiness when I'd come home from the barn, almost like after a good workout class, but in a different way, in a more like wholesome way. Because not only was it exercise, but it was also, you have to be so present. You have to be, every step paying attention to what your body's doing, what it is doing, and what it's supposed to be doing. So being able to make those adjustments, much like you're talking about, like, if you are numb to it, you cannot adjust it.
Yes.
And so it was a huge part of my life. I want to say, I look back at it, and emotionally it occupied 90% of my life.
Wow.
And psychologically it occupied 95% of my life, and it realistically probably occupied about 50% of my time. But it was just a really huge part of my life. I also had a really significant social group that was tied to that too. To this day, my best friend is a woman that I met when we were 13. So there was this unintentional, you paid attention to what was happening to your body, not because you can be present with the pains you're experiencing, and not because it's grounding and it helps us, soothe and relax, to pay attention. You paid attention to your body because you need to, so that you can communicate well in this horse and rider relationship. So I share it that way, because no part of the teaching that I got was around how being attentive to what I'm going through is impacting the relationship in a way that, are we furthering connection? Are we increasing the care and compassion for one another? It was more just like, okay, you should probably be kind to your horse, because otherwise you won't accomplish the task that you're hoping to accomplish. And as I grew from that point, then, in my later teenagerhood, I also experienced a series of traumas that compounded. And part of that was traumatic grief. And then, honestly, that was like the domino. And then things kind of I'm imagining, for some reason, like somebody just like stumbling out of a car, and you just watch this, you're just like, like, it was just, honestly, like probably 5 years of life stumbling that was really kind of triggered from that traumatic grief that I specifically experienced in horseback riding. And I mean, it has been a journey back ever since then. I would love to say that the day that my horse left in 2009, then that was the grief point for me. I would love to say that I'm like fully recovered from that. But because of the things that have that unfolded from that point, there has been this long process of like coming back to my body, and coming back to that relationship with horses, and coming back to my relationships with people. And so ultimately that led me into one of the kickstarting points of me starting to feel better was the awareness of how purely you asking your body to act as if it feels a way kickstarts the neurochemical experience of feeling that way.
Mm.
So when I was feeling entirely fearful and paralyzed by anxiety, I came into this information that was like, or you could pretend just for a moment, like, what does your face look like when you're joyful or confident? And just for a moment, if you ask your facial muscles to do that, there are some of the same neurochemicals happening at that time as if you were truly confident. That freaking blew my mind at 18 years
Wow.
old. And that I found myself reading a non-fictional book with such curiosity. And I'm not a particularly good student still to this day. And I was going into college and I found out, like, if I'm going to get a bachelor's degree, it's going to be psychology. Like, I'm not going to be able to get through college any other way because I need to have this curiosity for it. And so then there was this unfolding of like just continuing to take psychology classes to then finding, getting involved with a social emotional skills program for children that taught, how to socialize, how to be emotionally present and emotionally aware, but integrating horses. And I got to work with a licensed marriage and family therapist there. And prior to that point, my goal was to get a bachelor's in psychology. Working there for 3 months and then for the next 3-4 years, it only just solidified, like, I'm not interested in just a bachelor's. Like, I want to be a therapist. I want to work intimately with people. And I've been lucky to join the field where there is such an awareness that, like, we need to integrate our whole brain. We need to activate our whole brain when we're looking at rewiring experiences. And so somatic work has really, it's developing some speed right now. And somatic work essentially is one of the ways that we can ask our whole brain to be involved in a process rather than just the linguistic part, which is talk therapy. And the thing is one of the trickiest parts that therapists come into and clients come into is that we will be talking about what it feels like and thinking we're doing somatic therapy and still not quite cutting it. And that's because it's like talking about riding a bike when actually you need to be riding the bike.
Yeah.
You don't need to be talking about riding the bike. You need to be riding the bike because that's actually how invested you need your body to be to get your brain online. And then there's bringing some pieces in there to make that possible. Because when you have traumatic experiences like Carrie and I have both talked about, there's some huge speed bumps that come into that process. So there's almost like work you have to do to make somatic work possible. Yeah. So that was a journey to get there. I think I answered the question.
Yes,
You
and
did.
so many others.
Yes,
So many others.
Okay.
Like, no, I was like, yes, and that,
and that.
please.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there were some really concise, like, clear ways of stating things that you've not stated in that way before. So thank you.
My brain is like, thank you for the reality check from the outside.
Yeah.
It's actually it's quite easing to hear that. I can trust that information.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was all
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for sharing your journey as well. I think it's so beautiful hearing how the pieces of your life all came together in a way, like, they all led to where you are today. And they're all like intertwined, and there's meaning in all of them. Your experiences from a young age now translate into your purpose and what you do as an adult. And so that's
fully.
Yes, such a beautiful.
It's a bit
beautiful
spicy
thing.
hearing that, isn't it?
It is. Yep.
And you also answered a lot of good questions there too that I had about, the importance of somatic work and why it's so important for us to connect our emotional well-being with our physical well-being. And
and with others.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Big.
How can you please outline for the audience how the concept of smashed up somatics came to life And what inspired the both of you to combine your forces together to do the work you do now? This is probably my favorite question because I loved hearing the story of how you both came about with Smash Up Somatics. Please share with the audience.
I gotta tell you, Michelle, you're like, can you please outline? And I'm like, I don't know if I can outline, but I can try. Because there is so many pieces.
Yeah. And I know for me, working with my students and having it sort of sneak up on me where students were coming to me and saying, hey, you actually are treating the whole artist like a whole human, and we're physically able to integrate things we're doing in our therapy sessions in our voice lessons. And I'm, well, that's interesting. So when we hear sort of in psychology language, you need to integrate. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And what was happening?
You need to ride the bike, Carrie.
You need to ride the bike.
Ride the bike.
So in my voice studio, people were riding the bike. They were talking about perfectionism, but in my studio, they were actually working with it in the room. They were working with anxiety in the room. They were working with, oh my gosh, I'm being seen vulnerably exactly in this moment as I am in the room. And so that started getting my wheels turning. And then I had an influx of therapists that were coming for voice lessons, and they were saying the same thing. And I thought, maybe it is time to take this outside of the studio and make something. And then dun, 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 came Ellen. Enter Ellen. Stage right.
I mean, we only had 2 options to choose from, I guess. But still felt special.
It still was good. It's still good.
Yes. So in my process of this is twofold. There is my process of healing as an individual, which increases and expands my ability to hold space for clients. So my healing process is honestly, I probably need the weight and the encouragement of knowing, like, no, me healing is not just because my life would feel fuller and I'd feel, more capable or grander. It's like there's this edge of responsibility of I need to heal my parts of me so that I can be as present as possible and be the conduit for healing that I want to be. And that's unfolded in a lot of different types of therapy, starting with talk therapy, because that was the most common and most approachable. And being into, and then I've always been a fairly physically active person that, as an adult trying yoga and finding like, wow, this is the only other place besides horseback riding that I feel my body is really intertwined with what I'm, my breath and my awareness being intertwined with my body is doing. And then as I actually got into the technicalities of training to be a therapist and learning about these other modalities and learning about brain spotting, which is considered an experiential and somatic therapy, and doing that as a client and feeling for the first time in my life at 28 or 29, after having done that therapy pretty consistently for about 8 months. And by consistently, I'm talking an hour and a half, probably once a week, and then maybe once every other week. That for the first time in my life, it felt good to be in my body. And by that, I mean sitting in the gym, laying in the ground and feeling like, wow, how cool is it to have a body? And that's a lot of years to be living in a body to feel like that for the first time. And so I had gotten to a point that I didn't need to be in therapy for a phase of time. And so I'd fallen out of my own therapy and was cruising along because I had healed up a lot of spaces, and then was getting to this point where, essentially just like another step up in the spiral of life of like, okay, here we are. Like I elevated based off that healing. And now we're kind of circling back to the zone where I've got some sensitivity and fear of vulnerability. And okay, I need to step back into therapy. And the thing is, like, I'm really fucking smart and I'm very sensitive and I have a tendency to out therapist therapists. And I'm like, I have to find a therapist who's like not going to be too direct because that scares me and I'll leave. while also like, while also, being with, doing something, I just need to not be outsmart. Like, I need to not be able to outsmart whoever I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
And this just coincided with my 30th birthday, where one of my good friends from high school remembered a conversation we'd had 3 to 4 years earlier where I said, maybe in adulthood, I'll pick up singing. Like, maybe that's the thing that I'm going to do. And she gifted me 4 lessons with Carrie, Hennessy soprano. And it took me 3 months to get into Carrie's studio. And that was only because Carrie emailed me to be like, hey, remember those gift certificates? You said it nicer than this. But essentially it was like, remember those gift certificates that you were gifted in March? When are you going to come in? Like, let's find a time. I'm like, damn, she found me. And I had not met her at this point. And in my first lesson, I went in coming prepared to be like, I just really want to be able to sing comfortably the happiest points of my life. I was, singing jingles about walking down the street. I've lost a bit of that and I want to get back to that place. But like, if I need to learn how to read music, I guess I will if I have to. And I don't think your answer was like, you don't have to do that. But
it was kind of like
it
that.
was a little
it was
like
a little
that.
bit like, no, don't worry. No, that's not it.
That's not it. And at the end of that lesson, I got in the car with my significant other, and if I didn't tell him specifically, I at least thought to myself, me and this woman who I just met, Carrie, we're going to make something one day. We're going to make an experiential thing, because in my mind, this is exactly what therapists need, because so often as therapists, we're asked to be quite quiet, actually, especially in healing trauma. There's a bit of like, be the container, try not to impart too much of your experience on them. There's actually an acronym WAIT that says, why am I talking? So therapists.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. That makes so much more sense now.
Yes. So there's a lot of reserving what does come alive in us, so that this nervous system that's trying to heal in front of us can actually unfold as it needs to, not as we are inviting attention to it. Generally, there are times where, there are times where it's like, there's a thing over there. Like, maybe we could boop that way. We've been circling it for weeks now. Anywho, but when you are in the process and experiencing another nervous system reprocessing, part of that is me lending my groundedness and my centeredness to this nervous system. But that also means I'm taking on and metabolizing some of that as well. So as a practitioner, when we're asked to actually reserve and withhold a part of our physiology, truly, that actually helps our nervous system reduce and release the tension and the stress of experiencing life, especially some of the most stressful points of life, which is trauma. That is how therapists burn out, because it could be as intense as vicarious trauma, where therapists actually are traumatized by the content and the processing that they're witnessing. But more often, it's just a nervous system that's exhausted and it's got nothing left to give, because have I had a chance to express, to get out what I'm taking in? And no, in that session with that client, that may not always be possible, accessible, or even conducive to their treatment. But are we having other places where we let it out? And so that's where you see a lot of people who are like, here's the stretches you should do in between sessions, and like, this is the breath you should take. And there's enough videos out there now that talk about therapists, what are you doing to take care of yourself in between sessions? But it still doesn't integrate sound.
No, it doesn't integrate sound at all. And I think that was the big, may I share the thing that was so clear in our first session together was, Ellen had expressed that for months she sort of felt hoarse.
Oh, yeah.
Months and months and months she felt hoarse. And she was trying to chalk it up to allergies. And I'm like, no, this is your work. And in my whole being, I'm like, no, this is your work. Because you're literally, and going back to my trauma of like feeling that kicked in the throat, it was just very clear that this human in front of me, whether, I mean, obviously you're not trying to hold on to it, but you're definitely holding on to something that you want to say, and it's caught up right here. So when we started playing with, well, what kind, like
inner workings?
Yeah, like really, really playing with the sound making and not pushing, and like, and even in that place of hoarseness, like what does your voice want to say? What kind of sound does it want to make? So it wasn't about ever singing. It was just about sounding. It was about like when you take a breath and you feel into this place of hoarseness, what is going to come out? And it was the tiniest of sounds. It was just the tiniest of, like, it was aching for care.
Yeah.
That was the feeling that I got from your voice the first session we had together with it, was that it was aching for care. And as Ellen would do for her clients, I had the opportunity to be with her in that I kind of knew that that's what was happening. And then the discovery of like, oh, there's this client and this timeline lines up with the length of time I've felt hoarse. It's the client that was bringing up things that I still hadn't processed within me in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And couldn't say the thing.
Right. And there was this, especially as that ties in, because I'm just, that timeline of specificity between that particular client and then losing my voice was so specific. And I remember that experience of thinking like, of course, because like this particular client was in situations where their full body was actually locked away. And it, rightfully so, then a lot of trauma for, especially at like a very, very young age. And so it was just like, it's clinically relevant. It's clinically relevant for what their body was going through, / also it's relevant for even my own body and how I can, because the difference being the biggest piece of processing highly intense experiences is it's safe now and I can now. When it wasn't safe then and I couldn't then. And then some mixture and version of that. There's probably some other edges. And so especially singing and sound being this edge of somatic work that we collectively do not address much. Sometimes there's like primal screaming.
People want to do scream therapy.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting. That's like one like it's like this much of it.
Yes.
That's like this
it's
much.
Like one little part of the spectrum
part of it.
Yeah.
And I worry about that because also if it is not facilitated in a way that doesn't it's too easy for the client to go further than they're actually able.
Yeah.
It's too easy to go like over the edges.
As I made myself hoarse.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. You sure did.
I did. Yeah. Speaking of going too far.
So you both speak on using your voice and your body to process these traumas and these emotions, right? I'm really curious on how do you begin to approach this processing through your body when you've been avoiding your body for your entire life, or you're deeply uncomfortable in sitting with your physical being. How do you approach doing somatic work like this to process those things?
Can I point something out?
Yeah.
Michelle, as we were listening to you, I noticed the sounds that Carrie was making and the sounds that I was making just in taking your question in and I point that out because I'm like, even that is actually one of the first steps, is that sound that I don't know if everybody makes it. I'm not sure if I could see culturally and even more specifically, like to familial culture, that making it that yummy sound. When somebody says something that touches you, right? Or even you just want to share that little note that says, I'm hearing what you're saying. And so even just as you were asking this question, I know within myself, I'm like, I'm like, oh, well, that's a sound. Like, that's one way.
Yes. And I feel like that's what I tend to use in here as a first thing. Like that was one of the first thing we did was we're just going to make a yummy sound. Everyone knows what it is. It brings good feelings, like of food, of connection, but then to take that sound. And I wonder, Michelle, you've been making these noises the whole time we've been just telling us you're present. You're I wonder what it would feel like and if you would be open to making that sound and actually feeling what it feels like. Because I feel like it's an entry point where public speakers are told that, like, this is how we can interact when we're talking with people, when we're presenting a thing, when we're pitching an idea. And we sort of do it, but what does it feel like to do it?
Yeah.
Could
we
what does it feel like
too, though?
Yeah.
Can we do it?
Can we just do it?
Yeah. I just make the yummy sound, like
yeah, like like you just heard like you heard something juicy that really resonated with you.
That's where it goes.
I don't know how to put it into words. It feels, I mean, when I was making those noises.
Rode the bike.
You just rode the bike.
You just rode the bike.
Okay.
You did it.
You did it.
You rode the bike.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry that I cut you off, Michelle. You were starting to put words to the experience.
You're fine.
Yeah.
I asked that question because really selfishly, because that's me as a person, and I think also being introduced to somatic work, I think my listeners too, you're grasping for an understanding for these things, and for me personally, I don't want to have anything to do with processing in my body because it feels uncomfortable, it feels foreign, it feels weird. And when you were talking about how you were looking for a therapist that could outsmart you or that you couldn't outsmart, I deeply resonated with that too, because the experiences I've had in therapy, my therapist will, I'll tell them, I understand I feel this way because this is something that happened and this is why I act in this way. And she's like, yeah, you're really,
you get it.
Yeah. And I've had many therapists tell me, like, you're so good at intellectualizing these things. But when it comes to feeling it and processing it, like, I can talk about it all day, right? And it's almost, it keeps me separate from the traumas and the things that are happening. But when it comes to actually feeling that emotion and processing it, I run away from that. And I've never had anyone really give me tools in how, when you say process your emotions, I'm like, I don't know what what am I supposed to do with that?
Technically,
yes, actually,
yeah. So that is why I asked that question, because I wanted some clarity and some steps
of course
to take.
And sometimes in the work we do, it ends up, we use the word play shop because we're sort of tricking the brain in a way.
I mean, also we all work too much. Like we don't need to work anymore.
We don't need to work anymore.
Like,
and it ends up,
we're going to go play.
It does end up being,
we're not going to a workshop.
But what it really ends up is that we're stepping in and out of, what does it feel like to make the sound that I'm feeling right now?
Mm-hmm.
What does that feel like? And because often, again, the intellectualizing of how we feel isn't feeling the thing.
Right.
Like we're not riding the bike if we're talking about the feeling.
Yeah.
To take the time and even to make a yummy noise into whatever we're feeling right now, that yummy noise is going to change in 100 different ways if we keep doing it for 10 to 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And then when we are seen by others making that yummy noise, it's
the best worst.
It's the worst, best worst.
It is absolutely terrifying, but it's so good. It's so good. And we truly need that too. We actually, as hold on, wait. Sorry, my brain just did a thing where like I have information and there's a very personal part that my brain is having a hard time moving past right now, which is just the admiration and the gratitude I feel, Michelle, for you sharing your experience, and the admiration and being able to put words to it in such a way that is so public and accessible. If somebody wants to hear this, they can come hear it. And that's vulnerable as fuck. And I just want to highlight like the vulnerability involved with that. And that you have a safe place in being able to put words to your experience, right? Mm-hmm. That's what the intellectualizing is that I can talk about it. This is an access point to the information. Mm-hmm. And I think both from a professional point, but also a personal place, is somewhere along the way, we lost track of the way that we're doing it that does work is a way to do it. And we don't need to ditch it entirely to also continue expanding into these areas. Mm-hmm. And I know that I carry these ideas of like, oh, because I'm intellectualizing, like I'm not doing it right. It's like, no, my being's just telling me like, this is where I can get in to something that needs to be in a place of care. And that's why we're engaging in the whatever habit it is that does help us feel safe. Mm-hmm. And can we be in environments that say like, okay, well, I am able to talk about it. I do have sound about it. And it feels so exposing and vulnerable to make the very specific sound that's not a word, right? It doesn't have that analytical linguistic edge to it. It really is this very, very exposed and bare. This sounds that we make are the barest and brutalest parts of us, because the emotions are stored in our bodies in the ways they are, because that is how neurobiologically our systems process the world around us hundreds of thousands of years longer than we've had language. Mm-hmm. And then with that, analytical ability definitely happened before language, but still there's this edge of just getting down to the most bare parts of us as neurobiological creatures, that now we're putting this long sound to it. It's not just a quick series of sounds that make up a word that carry all this meaning, but really just this, like, I feel like it's when they release, like NASA releases footage of like, we can hear stars now. I feel like that's what, like, when they're like, by the way, this is what this star that is billions of light years away sounds like. Sometimes I feel like that's the exposure it can feel like for ourselves, rather than put words to an emotion. What's the sound to it? But when we have painful events, we are designed and we got here with the care of others. And when I say we got here, I mean, even just basically, like, it took two humans hanging out long enough to conceive us, and then get through that pretty vulnerable, 9-10 months, and then the years following us being born. Like, we need others to help our bodies expand and grow. We are also interconnected. And so when we have this huge emotional experience, which when we're younger, our emotional experiences are huge because we've been here 45 days. So the emotional experiences, comparatively, 15 minutes across 45 days, 15 minutes is actually kind of a huge chunk of 45 days. And so the younger we are, even though the emotional experience is not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of how many years we're alive, those emotional experiences actually occupy quite a bit of our lives. And so we need others there to help us process it. And so when I can make a sound that's not just a word, I am allowing the way that my body vibrates together and flaps air around to permeate into your being. And now as an adult, though, I know that you're going to make meaning out of it. And then, oh God, what does that mean if you make meaning out of the sound I just made?
Yep.
And oh my gosh, I want it to mean this very specific thing. So maybe I need to kind of kind of bring that part in, because if I go over here, you might take it in a different way, or you might take it in a way that makes you mad or scared or something, or pulls you away from me.
Yep.
And so can we be in an environment that's safe enough that I can make sounds, know that you're receiving it, and then see what you do with it? And ideally, like, I hope you do, I hope you take it in and you're loving and caring. But the reality being is, like, how many times have I said something or made a sound about something? Oh man, I'm just thinking of teenagers screaming and yelling, yelling and slamming doors.
Yes.
And how much intensity that's met with.
Yes.
That all of a sudden tells us, like, when you feel grandly, the sounds should not match it. Because how dare you be disrespectful to slam doors in my house, right? And so, like, then we find ourselves in some lady's singing room at 30 years old. And they're just telling you to make sounds. And it's like, ma'am, we cannot just make sounds about anything, because that means so much more. And I say that because it's like we get then into these phases of our life where it's like, now my body actually doesn't know if I can make that sound. It's strict and constricted in these ways because sounds that are outside this window of appropriateness are limited.
And intelligent linguistics, like when the communication is only about, oh dear Jerry, when we're so used to having to be so specific and tangible, when the grander emotional things can't be contained in just that necessarily. So finding that entry point of verbiage and then seeing if we can expand it into, and what if that verbiage had a sound? I'm feeling very touched at the moment. Michelle, thank you for sharing that piece about your experiences in therapy and your beautiful, concise entry point to yourself through text and verbiage. It's so important.
I have to level with you too.
Yes. Yes.
I'm feeling deeply, how do I, like, constricted. And typically when I feel that in my body, that means that I'm uncomfortable with going somewhere, or and I'm noticing that, as we're talking about being present in your body. And I'm asking myself, okay, why am I having this reaction to this? And
yes.
In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, how can making sounds possibly heal me from traumas, right?
Sure.
And I see it right before me. I see you two affirming each other and making these noises, and you're taking it in. And I mean, like you said earlier, Ellen, you said and then Carrie, you were like, I feel very touched right now. And I saw the exchange between you two. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. And I am a bit cynical. That's a good word. I'm a bit cynical to the process because I'm trying to understand. And like you said, these sounds and this processing, it sometimes you cannot put verbiage to it. And I'm feeling a resistance in myself to actually feel these things.
Yes.
So I don't know what to do with that information, but I'm here to share it with you in real time.
Oh, that's juicy.
Michelle, you fucking nailed it.
Yeah, completely.
By putting sounds to the feeling that by putting sounds to the feeling that I'm skeptical and I'm unsure and that I can't do it. And there's this funny thing that comes alive in me where I'm like, well, what was wrong with those sounds that you just used to describe what was happening within you? And that's the end of the sentence. That's the end of the thought.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Thank you for actually putting the words to the feelings I was having, because I was feeling the same thing, where I almost wanted you to linger on the words a little bit longer, to not just say them, but I wanted to feel them a little bit more. I wanted a little bit more time with your expression of you listening to what your body was telling you and taking the time and the energy and the care to notice it, and then to be tender enough and open enough to decide you wanted to also share it with us.
Yeah.
Which you didn't have to.
Yeah.
And you did.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is not a wrong way to feel ever. What we do with what we feel can cause hurt and harm to others. But there is not a wrong way to feel ever. And that came from a place of noticing that now I know about you because of what you've shared now, because of the sounds that were words, but they were sounds that you shared, that now this space where to me it's this feeling of information like like quiet snow settling. It's that space in conversations where there's no words, there's no sound. And let me highlight, collectively in white Western culture, we don't do such a good job with that, like nothing space. So sometimes it's just uncomfortable because that's unfamiliar. And our brain does not like things that are unfamiliar. Our brains do not like things that are out of habit or out of the norm, just out of what's happening most often. So sometimes that settled and quiet place is uncomfy because of that. And especially just that information alone, like it's quite okay that it's uncomfy here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
thank you
Yeah.
for
Oh,
for
Michelle.
validating. And I think I get caught up in, like, I want to do something the right way, right? And
Of course.
it made me feel a bit emotional hearing you say and give me permission almost for me to just be. There is no right or wrong way to do this. And that was really freeing to hear you say that. Because I mean, we're here to talk about somatic work, right? And the tips and tricks and how to do it.
Here it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're telling me we're doing it. And yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If I'm just hoping to simplify it just a bit. What we're doing is noticing it. That's what's different than just our day to day, I'm going to go from here to then from my car to then to the grocery store. I literally can't do any of those things without my body. Right. So like, I'm always in my body. At least my brain is always in there, but my awareness and my intention is not always in my body. And so the somatic work is bringing our awareness to it, which doesn't, and then of course, eventually it is about, well, once I notice it, I can start to make shifts and changes. But the bear, like, all we really gotta do is just notice that it's even there.
So and then being specific about the work we do with voice, we're using our voice all the time.
Yeah.
Usually to some outcome. So we have conversations all the time, but how often do we actually take a moment to feel the sentence leave our body?
Wow.
To feel the breath move through the letters, to feel it leave and sort of hang in that uncomfortable air while we wait for a response.
Wow.
You do have to be a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, I think, to let the information linger. I'm just thinking, like,
I'm a performer. I'm okay with it. Yeah.
It is risky, though, to just let the information linger.
Yeah.
And that's why I say a bit of an adrenaline junkie of like,
No,
wait.
Both definitely have kept me on my toes this entirety of recording.
But what's next?
Yes. So I'm like, we're sitting here. Okay. Do I say something? Do I? So no, I'm so
You're so good at noticing.
Yes,
Michelle.
completely.
You're really good at that.
Well, I want to circle back to something you said earlier, Ellen, about how our hurts can harm others, especially when they're left unaddressed. And
yes,
can you tell me how doing this somatic work and the bringing in the aspect of voice specifically too, how does that help in dealing with these unresolved issues? Because like I expressed earlier, I'm a bit skeptical. And that, I think I'm feeling discomfort because it makes me think of my own unresolved traumas.
What a good human you are.
Yes.
Your brain's such a good brain.
Yep.
Doing good brain things
like
that.
Yep.
And I felt myself not wanting to go there. Because that's very bare and very brutal and very scary. But I'm wanting to go there. I think that it's important that I do go there. Carrie, in the beginning, when you talked about your journey, you said that there's a period of time where you didn't sing because of a sexual trauma that occurred with someone that you trusted. And I also um I also
Mhm.
experienced a sexual trauma in college, and
Mhm.
have not
Hmm.
dealt with. I don't think I've ever really truly processed it. I remember at the time when it
Mhm.
happened, um, I immediately turned to anger during that time. And I
Mhm.
remember taking it out on my significant other and
Yeah.
myself, and
Yeah. Mm.
used that anger so that I didn't have to dive into the actual pain of the situation, because it was easier for me to feel that anger and latch
Yes.
onto that than
Yes.
actually
Mm.
process and say, that actually really deeply affected me, and it still
Yeah.
does, and
Yes. Yeah.
that was really traumatic and painful, right?
Yes.
So I apologize if I'm blabbing, but I feel as though I need to give
Not at all.
context.
Yes.
Yes.
Please.
Yeah.
I've spoke briefly about this experience in a previous episode, but I still didn't really. I kept it at bay,
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
I'm wanting to speak more on it because I think it's important for people to hear, and also for me to say.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Could we be here with you right here, right
Yeah.
now, and know that we're here with you while whatever this feeling is, that's here too, because you just did a huge thing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh.
I don't know if I mentioned it to you too during our initial consultation, but I said that, I was interested in somatic work because, again, my history with intellectualizing,
Yes.
I was like, I think this is the key. I think this is the key to me really addressing my hurts.
Yeah.
And years ago, my therapist had recommended I read the book Body Keeps a Score.
Sure.
And it's a very clinical book. It's not not said in any like conversational fictional way. And I literally read the first 2 pages and immediately started sobbing. And I said, okay, let's close that and put it back on the shelf. And recently I took it off of the shelf, and I was like, okay, I think that it's time. It's time. And I knew years ago why I had that reaction is because of that sexual.
It was a lot at first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm getting emotional now because
Of course.
I feel those same feelings of discomfort come up when you talk about being present in your body and feeling how the words come out. And you asked me earlier to make the yummy sound, and I said and you were like, yeah, and I was like, no.
You're saying yes and my body's saying no.
Yeah.
I'm so used to hearing that. Yeah.
And it immediately, my mind went to that experience, and I was like, oh, we're there again, Michelle.
Yeah.
So I don't know where to go with that, but I'm sharing it with you. And I'm curious, like, how in the heck is noises and singing going to help me address these really painful experiences and things that I haven't processed?
Yes.
The one thing that I know for sure is, again, bringing the attention to the parts of our body that are saying no. The ones that are resisting. The thing that I talk about a lot when I'm working with students that have had, maybe they don't tell me, but I can intuit that they've had sexual trauma, is the places in their body that are numb. And in other voice work, people would say, well, just, you've got to do this thing, and that's what it takes to move the voice through your body. And instead, again, that gentle awareness of the parts that are saying, no, no, thank you, not today, maybe not ever, for sure not today. But then to find the ones that are like, well, actually, I can do something. Like, even if it's your left pinky, Like, actually, I can feel this really easily. And to put that awareness as you're breathing to the places that feel easy to access are really, really imperative. So as words are leaving your face, as they leave your face hole, if we could sort of talk about them as just leaving your face hole instead of always having so much meaning, sometimes even practicing, like, what does it feel like to pay attention when I'm ordering a latte? What does it feel like to pay attention when there's no consequence? When there's no emotional, heightened thing happening.
Or no destination.
There's no it's just, I'm ordering a latte.
Yeah.
I'm, at the grocery store and I'm saying hello and isn't it a beautiful day? Like, what does it feel like to have an exchange that isn't in a heightened state?
Yeah.
What does it feel like to walk from the parking lot into the grocery store? What parts are awake? Can I feel the bottom of my feet? Are my knees creaking? Can I feel that my neck, is funky? Can I feel that I can't feel my sternum? And I absolutely can't feel below my belly button. Like the kindness of that awareness is the places that are frozen and numb are that way for reasons. And the more that we can be aware of those places and just say, I see you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try to do anything with you right now, but I see you.
Yes.
And thank you for doing your job.
Yeah.
Wow.
The more then there's time for gentle, gentle melting and softening as is available. And voice and paying attention to the way we are communicating in those really dull, mundane moments, start translating gently, gently, slowly, slowly into the conversations that are really meaningful in our day-to-day world and the people that we're most interconnected with on a daily basis and most emotionally entwined with.
Wow.
May I add something?
Yes, of course.
Because I'm wondering if my sense is I might be speaking to the academic edges of you, or maybe like the scientific edges of you. We're like, okay, but like, what's this? Like, why would something like this work? And there's a very real part that what Carrie and I are bringing forward is so new, truly, that it's not something that's been touched on and had attention to. And once again, we cannot do what we are not aware of. We cannot fix it. We cannot adjust it if we don't have awareness of it. And that is true collectively. And so there is not a lot of science around specifically, like, what is it about the physiology of speaking and sound that helps our bodies process trauma. But what we do know is that our bodies are the vehicle of which we need to process trauma. And so that's why we have to bring awareness into the body. And our voices start from within our bodies. And it is movement that we can create within that then impacts the physiology around us, but also it has these emotional connections in our brain. And it is also something that another brain can take in. And there's movement in their, neurobiology as well about what's happening there. And so I think there's just a part of me that wants to touch in on, we don't really know fully, while also we know that it does. And so that being like, we don't know what exactly it is specifically that is so helpful about making sound in kind and compassionate places, except for that we do know we feel differently in a way that feels more grounded, it feels more safe maybe, or it feels more relaxed, it feels more at ease, it feels less on edge. We feel different after doing this than we did before. And so there's also a piece of like, collectively, we are dissociated from our voices. It's so, and I can only speak from like the white Western perspective and English speaking perspective, because there's also, there's different tones and there's different muscles involved with English versus French versus Thai versus Chinese, or I should say Mandarin. And so how, right, if different muscles are being used, different things are being processed, and then also cultural context for experiences and labels for those experiences. Because once again, we can only address what we're aware of. And, well, darn, I forgot where I was going with that. Language, processing, sounds. Okay. I don't know. We feel differently when we, when we make sounds about it.
Yeah.
But we need to bring awareness to it, because language does have such an end goal. It doesn't, because if I don't have this ability within me, how would I teach the small human that's near me? And that's how any of us learn. We learn from the other nervous systems that have been here a couple years longer than us. What are you doing? Okay, I'm going to replicate that. That's how we learn anything, is by watching and taking it in and trying it out on our own. And so, but when we've got generations and generations and generations of not really actually paying attention to what is the feeling behind the word, what is the feeling that this sound is trying to help get out of us so that it is inside your nervous system, and then you do something with it. And that is relating, is I'm sharing something with you, your being takes it in, and it mixes it with the very special recipe that is Michelle. And then ideally something else comes out of it. And it could be words, but it could also be a facial expression. It could be a shift in your body. It often is words, though. There's an expectation. I have to say something. And the reality is like, we don't always have to say something, but can we express? Can I make a shift in my body or in my voice so that I can not just show you that I took you in and I had things about it, but then can I really share with you what actually happened in here with me? And so that actually brings me back to a personal point of the amount of times today I've thought how freaking brave you are. Because it's like you see, because what you've shared, when you've taken in what we have shared, and you take that into your system, and you're watching what's happening, and then you see this edge come up, and you're like, ooh.
That's the sound.
I mean, that's how I translated it. That's probably when I imagine being you.
Yeah.
And I let that mix with my nervous system. What comes up is this feeling of like, ugh. And what we're talking about is empathy. What we're talking about is the ability to witness somebody, take it into our nervous system, our brains make sense of it, and then make something out of it. Right. And so it's like you see these edges and you're like, oh, and then there's times where you're like, that's very fair. That's very brutal. And it's very scary, which is different than too bare, too brutal, and too scary. We don't want to go to the too muches. You've already done the too muches, and we don't need to do that anymore.
No.
The varies, that's where we get to discern. Is this a time, a place, a person that I can be very bare? And it's fucking terrifying just as it is just within me. So I need to know that if I am very bare, that you're going to be caring for it, because it's already been probably, if it's very bare, probably at some point it was too bare. And we've built up enough something, I don't know,
resilience and self-compassion, and hopefully
that now it's like, okay, it's just very, but it doesn't mean everybody gets it. And so I just want to highlight, like, for the part of you that is striving for healing, you have parts of you that are too bare, too brutal, and too scary. And then you have parts of you that are very bare and very brutal and very scary. And then there's probably some that are just bare brutal and a little scary. And then there's things, and each one of these you continue to level up in. You went a bit further today with your story and your experiences than you have in bare and brutal before. But there was a building point even to that. And even before there was recording it for a podcast, I would guess that there is some version of some sounds with somebody, or maybe even just in your room by yourself staring at your ceiling fan. But that is, I get worried about saying healing because I think it can be so easy to feel like we're not healed enough, or like we're not, that we're broken. And the reality is like, you're humaning. You are humaning. And can we also see how far you've come as a human, even in the midst of having really atrocious things happen that feel like they push us back, because they do take a lot of time, energy, and resources. But how far your being has come. And as you were speaking, Carrie, about like, can we be compassionate? Can we just notice where there's a no? And can that be okay? There's a no. And what came to mind is the idea of like, when our beings have been so dishonored, and whatever that may be, when they've been dishonored, when boundaries have been blown through, when, I'll just keep it at when they've been dishonored, then we can think, well, in order to get back from that place that does feel betrayed, I need to build all this up again so that it's okay. And the reality is actually the treatment is really honoring.
Yeah.
Which is honoring the no's, and honoring the fuck this, and honoring the I hate this, and honoring the nope, and honoring the like, I mean, do I even have a pelvis?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Literally.
Yeah.
Literally.
And that, especially if we hold the context, I'm like, wow, actually, I'm really stoked my brain decided to like not be so viscerally aware, because
it would have been too much.
It would have been too much. Or it was too much. And now it's like, you know what? We don't do too much anymore. And that's where you pushing through to the like, okay, it's scary, but I'm going to try.
Yeah.
That is so brave and exactly what we need, because yes, at one point it was too much, but now I'm in a place where actually now I can remind my body that I can handle it now.
Yeah.
That I can feel that. And we often need others' help. We need the nervous system of another grounded person there. And our voice being a way that we do make sound for what's happening within, and it comes outside of us, and another being is there to hear it and feel a way about it. And that's where the sound is so, so, so powerful. There is energetic waves pushing and moving the air in such a way that it blows across these little tiny ears and hairs in your eardrums, near your eardrums. I can't remember. And then that information gets translated into electrochemical information, and then our brain makes meaning out of that. And so the sound is so important to make, when actually we need to see that our beings shift and make changes in others. Because in times when we're blown through, it seems like me being here didn't matter. It seems like me being here was I even here? And there's some real pain that comes with that, because, you know, and that's where our hurts can hurt others. Because there's a bit like, how in your nervous system did you get the idea that another person's being has no boundaries? And we don't get to a place without our own, is somewhere, somehow that nervous system learned that. Right. And so when we can honor those parts of ourselves, hear it, feel it, give it air, give it space in the care of others, then it does reduce our need to defend, protect, or live out what our bodies have also been through, which often comes at the hands of or at the space of another person. That is then us, imparting harm, sometimes intentionally. There are people that do intentional harm because they've been very, very harmed. So there's a lot of things that just there's a lot of pains, rightfully so, there that we have to grapple with in reprocessing trauma, especially trauma at the hands of another human, right? An earthquake is a way different trauma to process than an assault at the hands of another human, because there's a brain behind that. An earthquake is like, right, well, Mother Nature. We know we're not going to outdo Mother Nature, but another human. And so it's a different kind of reprocessing that has to happen there.
What I was gathering when you were speaking is this one, the release of pressure to do something or perform as a human. I mean,
perform as a human.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you said it can start off something as simple as being present and aware in my body as I'm ordering a latte, or as I'm walking to the grocery store from the parking lot, and not necessarily having a destination. Because I think as humans, we're constantly looking for a destination or a result. And for you to say, there is none. We're just here. We're sitting with it. That was really beautiful. Beautiful to hear. And also, it clicked in my mind a bit when you said that. Because I that's what, thank you for appealing to my logical brain trying to grasp an understanding. But
yes,
that clicked for me. I was like, there is no destination or arrival to healing or whatever. We're here, we're acknowledging it, we're honoring this time with our bodies. And the other thing I also want to affirm you saying was this sense of duality that I have come so far in this healing, but I can also still be affected by things at the same time. I can practice these sounds and want to go forth into it, but also feel really uncomfortable and not want to go forth. And just having grace for yourself. And I think that's my biggest takeaway. And I think the most beautiful thing I've learned in our session together today is that somatic work is, you're right. I mean, do I really need to understand the basis of it? But I do know that, after I took that breath with you, I felt relieved, or I felt lighter. And maybe that's enough.
It could be just enough for just right now. And that freaking counts.
That rocks, in fact.
So you did it.
You did it. Here we are.
You absolutely did it.
With the help of you too. Thank you.
Michelle, thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Wow.
Well, as we wrap up the episode, I would love it if you could share what your future plans are for Smash Up Somatics and, your hopes to expand your reach and impact in educating the world on somatic work and vocal work. Y'all are both Staring lovingly into your eyes.
I know. Because I'm feeling so tender right now. And I just have this part of me where I'm like, I want it to be over. And then I'm like, it's okay, Ellen. You get to feel like you don't want it to be over. And, okay. I needed to give that feeling a little more space for me. And now I'm asking my brain to now shift into that piece about what we have in store. So we have our last few, we've been doing summer sounding sessions on Sundays, and those are going to be wrapping up in just a couple of weeks here, and then leading into our summer wrap up party that will be in person in Sacramento Labor Day weekend, and a more intensive and grounding version of what we've been doing, because we've been doing 2 hours once a week. This will be 2 days, 5 hours back to back. 5 hours each day.
The Saturday and Sunday of Labor Day weekend.
And sorry, my brain was I was just like flipping through information in my brain. So I'm about to say a thing, and then I'm going to pass the figurative mic to you, because I don't even know what I'm about to say, if it's going to be accurate.
Great.
And then
that sounds great.
Things you've been thinking about, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so as we wrap up with that, we're kind of in a phase of really continuing to really ground what is most right for Carrie and I, and our personal, we also have like other professional endeavors that really fuel us, as well as, what is Smash Up Somatics serving most accurately right now, and, continuing to grow into that. And so I think I'm just putting a lot of fancy words to like, we are still anchoring into what's most appropriate, while also a core feature is adjusting to like what is actively present. So, we have the capacity and we have the ability to adjust accordingly as we go. But as far as like finalized plans, we have this Labor Day retreat planned, and where we're going to go from there is in front of that. It's over there.
Yes, I don't know. But we've been really playing with format and working with different groups.
Yeah.
Like these play shops are really, they started off where there was a series for therapists and caregivers, so that we could really focus on that piece that we talk so much about. Helping the helpers.
Yeah.
And then it was just kind of open to anyone who wants to make a sound or figure out what this voice thing is all about. We also had a series for a group of coworkers that were going through a huge transition that work with climate change in a really intense work scenario, and really how to put community back in communication by using somatic practices and awarenesses around work relations.
Yeah.
And so there's again that flexibility of we can work with anyone, and our intention is when we're working with a specific group that we take our time to do the research and ask the questions about what's needed. And if it's a generic group, that really we are present with all of the things that we've done in the past, but then more present to what the group requires. Like it becomes clear as we're interacting with sound and with each other, what the specifics will come up. And I think in the piece of the work that we're doing, I think it's informing us as humans so much that it's really inspiring the work outside of what we're doing with Smash Ups. Like I'm prepping for a one-woman show that I put together that I wrote a couple of years ago that is still it's still evolving. It's going up Saturday, and I'm going to speak on stage about my sexual trauma for the first time ever, and actually reenact the moment of sound or non-sound. I'm actually going to reenact it for a group of people about what happened when I stopped singing for 12 years in my body. And I'm feeling so tender and inspired by this conversation. And like really excited to practice a really hard sound to make.
Yeah.
Because I have to, if it's going to be real, I sort of have to go there.
Yeah.
I can't just act it out. So thank you. And thank you for inspiring the very, very, very brutal that comes from this work. Like, we get to be more human and connect deeper in a way and embolden others to, like, know they're not alone. We're not alone.
Yes. Yeah. Exposing the bare and brutal.
Yep.
So that others can expose it.
Yep.
In safe and caring ways.
Yep.
Especially.
Yes.
That's core.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So just super thrilled, like the work we're doing is inspiring us outside of the work we're doing.
Yes.
So the concentric circles of the work just keeps going.
Yeah. Because it is around communication, and literally, like, show me a human who anything they do in their life doesn't have some communication with others in it. So that's where the adaptability comes in. It's like, show me a place where you have no communication involved, because guess what? I'm going to come in and be like, yeah, we got to communicate with yourself.
Well, I am absolutely thrilled for you two. All of the work and things that you're going to continue doing and creating. It's so important. And I'm grateful that I get to witness the work and continue being connected with you both. Just so happy.
I'm so glad that you found us.
Yes.
And that you reached out and took the leap to communicate with us, and that we could be here today. Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, as our last question before we wrap things up, sadly, what is the most important takeaway that you would like our listeners to remember from today?
I got mine.
Go.
There are times and places that you are already doing it. There are times and places where you're already healed. There are times and places where you're perfect. There's times and places where you've absolutely nailed that thing that you're working on. And it could be for a split second, but that counts.
Completely.
Yeah.
I think that the big thing always for me in the work is the simply noticing the yeses and the nos and everything in between. And from the dishonoring that has happened in the past, that you have a wonderful opportunity to honor the no's, to honor the solid frozen places, to let the anxiety be in the room with you while you do other things.
Oh man, yeah.
That is a big one, to like really, and to let the cognitive brain be in the room and the critic be in with you in the room while you're trying on other things. So while you're trying on walking into the grocery store and feeling the bottom of your feet, the critical brain might be going, this is the stupidest thing you've ever done. This is the stupidest thing ever. And just being like, okay, you get to be here, but also I'm going to keep feeling my feet just to see what that's like.
You're not the only thing here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't get, I like to say it gets to be here. It doesn't have to have center stage.
Yeah. Can I ask you the same question?
Thank you for taking it out of my face. I was like, oh,
oh, wow. Thank you for flipping it on me.
We want to know.
The interviewer becomes the interviewee.
My biggest takeaway.
And
there's
please
so
take
much.
as much
There's so
time.
much.
Yeah.
I would say my biggest takeaway from this all is that duality aspect that I mentioned earlier, that I can make space for two experiences at the same time, and that's okay. That I don't have to label everything and make it fit into one thing. And yeah, that we can give ourselves permission to be human, and being human is messy and multifaceted and complex, and we do ourselves a disservice when we try to make sense of our very human experiences.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest takeaway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, the idea of, I know we're at time, but I gotta say it. I can't not. The idea of making sense often is that it lands and connects with us. And I love that it is making sense, but often our senses are not involved with that.
Yes.
And so highlighting that making sense actually is bringing the senses in, which includes what we see, what we hear,
what we feel,
what we smell, what we feel. And so making sense really is all the senses, which includes also the interoception of what's happening within. So that's an important one sometimes that cannot always be accessible, but is often left out. But making sense really is, what are my senses
making of this?
Making of this.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Instead of like only.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank
awesome.
you so much, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Carrie and Ellen. Thank you for being with us today, with me, and both of your insights today into the mind-body connection and the power of voice has been life-changing for me. And it's inspiring to hear how you both are helping people find their authentic voices, and how witnessing you both fostering your connections with each other has been beautiful to witness today too. Yes, you literally both embody compassion and the playfulness that you're exactly wanting to do with, and you are doing with Smash Up Somatic. So thank you again. I mean, this whole episode is just us thanking each other. Yes,
Not
so much gratitude.
Way to spend a morning.
No, so much gratitude, though.
Yes, but the work you do it's incredibly valuable, and I know I am now a changed person after this, and I just deeply appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us today. And yeah, thanks for joining us, and for all the important work that you do and will continue to do.
Oh, thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Those of you listening, if you'd like to stay connected with Carrie and Ellen, follow along with their content, or learn more about their work and their upcoming retreats that they've mentioned, please go show them some love. You can find Smash Up Somatic socials and all their links and all that good stuff in the show notes I'll provide for you. Thank you again, ladies. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And as always, I will talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.